Hello, 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 everyone. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Audible, visible to everyone. Just say something in the comments so that I get an idea that we are live. Audio is proper and I'm visible. Just say something on the chat, in the comments so that I can get to know that we are live. Hello, hello, hello. Cool. So I will be waiting for hardly a couple of more seconds, maybe a minute or so, and then we'll get started. So guys, today we are going to touch upon the micro front end. So I will cover everything that is needed from a fundamental perspective to bring your understanding around the micro front end. And then if needed, we will take more sessions in order to deep dive into the code and I can show you different examples and whatnot. So stay tuned till the end. I'm going to help you to set up the fundamental things, like the right thought process when you are building anything related to micro front end, and even thinking about micro front end. Shall I use micro front end or not? When it is used, right? When it can bite back. Everything we are going to cover in today's session. So just stay tuned and be with me. Cool. All clear? Great. And a humble request, if you have any questions, please keep on adding on the comments so that I can take those questions from the comments as well. And I have already shared a Slido earlier. So I will be taking the question from the even the Slido. So in case you don't have access to the Slido, I will be sharing in the comment also, so that you can fill your queries in either of the way. So both works. So you can put in the Slido, you can put on the comments as well. Great. So good morning. How things are going on, guys? I know we are meeting after a long time. So I had my own priorities. I was not here. I stepped out to my hometown for some time. Cool. So how things are going on? Great, great. How's your so people who's you got good promos, good rewards, you are happy. You can say thumbs up, you can say something on the comment, and people who are saying, this time it was not that great. So you can share your feeling as well. Great. So I'm just thinking, shall we get started? Okay, maybe couple of more seconds to get started. Let's get started soon. Great. So I will be reading all your comments, guys. So be very proactive on your comments. So share whatever you can. Great. Let me share my screen, a quick one. Just give me a second. Okay. So let me know if my screen is visible to you guys. I will be talking about the agenda. The agenda today is all about the micro front end, setting the fundamentals about the micro front end so that you can make the right call, right choice, basically when to use, when not to use, what are the different kind of approaches that exist. Everything regarding that I'm going to touch upon in today's session. So yeah, so stay tuned, as I said. So like be with me till the end. You are going to get a lot of things. Cool. Great. So my screen is visible to you guys. Micro front end. So guys, okay, I will try to cover everything from the fundamental to the bit advanced where your thought process start triggering around not just using some library or the framework and saying that, hey, I created a SPA. No, that doesn't help, because seeing a terminology as a micro front end, people asking in interviews and you saying that I created a micro front end, from a buzzword perspective, it looks a cool thing that you have worked upon. But trust me, it comes with a lot of responsibilities, and it's a double-sided sword. And I'm going to help you to understand what kind of a thing that you have to take care of whenever when you are thinking about micro front end, and what are the benefits that you get when you are not thinking in terms of the micro front end. Both the things basically we are going to touch upon. Cool. So as the terminology says, you have a front end and you have to create some micros of that. Like people know microservices. Whenever it comes to the microservices, people think we create multiple different services which serve different purposes. Those are microservices in the backend. Now in front end, what is this micro front end? Is it similar to what we have in the backend? I will say yes and no at the same time. It is bit more than that what you have on the backend. And why? I will help you to understand. Let's understand how any of the web page basically is composed. So generally a web page has few simple, you can say, like I'm just trying to help you to create a simple web application, and from there we'll try to understand the complications basically that we had, right? So there generally we have some headers, we have some sidebar. When I say sidebar, you have some way to navigate to different pages in your section, and then you have different you can say sections in your application, which could be having different visit, it could be n number of other things, right? You take any of the application, generally your application are composed of different, you can say, sections in your web page. Now how this works and how it is going to be beneficial, basically let's talk about. So when I say this is a header, this is a sidebar, these are some components basically which are created when we talk about micro front end. Now think about, if I say this entire thing is not one single application, it is a composition of multiple application. What does it mean? I could simply say that, boss, this is one of my app, this is one of my app, this is one of my app, these are all different front end app. If I say this is my app 1, I could name anything, by the way. So this is my app 2, and I say this is app 3. Now, can I compose my front end web application using different apps to look like a single application, but under the hood, it is actually created out of multiple application, right? So what you are creating a micros basically, which is stitching together to look like a single application, but it is a composition of multiple application. Now the granularity of these application can be at different level, which I'm going to cover in much detail, but at a high level, this is what basically we do. Now there are multiple funny and interesting things happen at the same time, which means when you say you have an app, then this app could be, I'm just helping you out to understand, could be different React version, or in not just limited to React, it could be any. So when I say it could be any, it could be different library version, or you can say the framework version, or it could be altogether different library or framework, or entirely different library and framework. Now, what does it mean? You can say that, boss, I have a application which is built on React 17 and these are React 18, which is feasible. Yes, you can have a single application which comprise of both the thing. Now, the other thing what it could happen, you can say that, hey, this is my React application, this is my Angular, and this is my Vue.js. All of them can be stitched together in a single, you can say, web application. Even that is possible. So all these versions basically that we say, all those deviations, all those different kind of combination is basically is your micro front end. Now how do you achieve it? Before even I talk about how do you achieve it, there's a thought process that has to be built, which I'm going to help you to understand. Let's start with that. In layman term, if you have to say what is micro front end, you break your UI into smaller pieces, small and autonomous app, right? It could be related, it could be unrelated, it could be in same version, it could be a different version, it could be same framework, it could be different framework altogether, where when you make them work together and look like a single application, that is your micro front end. So this is something that we talk about whenever we talk about micro front end. You have to understand you are breaking into the smaller independent chunk, which could be same version, same library, same framework, or it could be different altogether, right? And hence stitching together in a single app. Now, let's talk about how can you achieve it. This is something very important to understand, guys. Whenever we talk about micro front end, the thought process has to be very clear. One, in order to build any application as a micro front end, generally we have two kind of levels at which you define your micro front end architecture. What does it mean? You could say create a, you can say micro front end at a route level itself. What does it mean? I could have an application called google.com. Now one application where you can book related to flights. So you can go to slash flights, you will be able to get everything related to flight booking. Now you could go to google.com slash, it could be anything. It could be, maybe it doesn't have although, so it could be recharge example, right? So you have to do anything related to recharge. Now it could be anything, google.com slash your drive, which is OneDrive example. So you wanted to open OneDrive, or if I have to make it realistic, I can say Meet, right? So which is Google Meet. So what I meant by, although these are not realistic, I can make it XYZ if people get confused. So it could be anything. So you have your XYZ website where on flight you wanted to open an application, on Meet you wanted to open another thing, OneDrive you wanted to open another thing. Now, the interesting part is what you as a developer, as a configuration, you can decide to render entirely different application. What I meant by, it could be different in such cases. What, when we talk about this route level configuration, so these are route level configuration, or you can say route level micro front end that you are creating. What does it mean? You are having a different build process. I will be talking about, you have different processes. In short, when you open flight, you are opening a different application altogether. When you're opening slash meet, you're opening different application. When you are opening OneDrive, you are opening a different application altogether. Again, fundamental remain the same. It could be same framework or a different framework, it could be same version, it could be different version altogether. So all these combination basically are possible when we talk about route level configuration. Example, I will help you to understand with one simple example. When I go to, got it, when I go to example this, and when I go to this, so you see one is route level and second is a subdomain which is works on the similar fashion. When you open this and when you open, say suppose new courses, don't worry around this, it's forget about this. I could open the same thing in the new courses. This is something that you see is actually the same thing, which is I have a different, you can say this is a static HTML page that you see, and this is a React application basically that you see. So what I meant by, you could have a different technology which are rendering the different routes altogether, which is feasible with a route level micro front end. Now the other one basically which comes at a visit level. So when I say visit level, it's more around the same thing when we talked about. It's a same page, it's not a different route. In the same route, I wanted to render a different technology altogether or a different library or framework altogether. Example, wherever you see the chatbot, most of the chatbot that you see on a application, those are those are your, so when I say visit level, it could be the same route which is, say suppose slash dashboard. In this dashboard, what you are going to have could be different thing. So you have some analytics and you have some chatbot. So this chatbot, so it could be different, it could be different, and you have a different shell. So you have a different shell, you have a different, in order to avoid the confusion, I could simply say boss, this is something like this. So this is your stats dashboard and this is your chat. Now what we are saying, when we are talking about a visit level configuration, you have one shell. In most of the cases you have a shell. I will talk about why we need shell in such cases. So visit level, you have a shell. One, you can have a communication between those independent visit basically that you have. You can have a lot of, you can say, things when you have a shell and you have a different visit. So in short, what I meant by over here is you have a stat which could be coming from a different, you can say, technology altogether, and chat, it could be coming from a different framework altogether. So I could simply say that, hey, this chatbot is something which I build in Vue.js, and this stat is something which I have built in Swell, kind of a thing. Or it could be anything I have built in React.js, and this could be my shell basically is in Angular. So which is practically possible. So this is another way where you do the composition, where you are saying that, hey, at a visit level, I will define which technology I'm going to use, but at a same route. So when you're opening a slash dashboard, within that particular page, you are using different technology in order to render. So this is where we have a visit level. I will be talking about what we use from a stand, you can say industry standard uh, library package technology approaches that we have. Everything I'm going to touch upon. So at a high level, this is what your route level and a visit level uh, micro front end are created. Now once you understand that, let me help you. How do you compose it? Before I talk about how do we even compose it, just wanted to know, guys, are you with me? You have any questions? Feel free to add more things, guys, in the comments, so that I know if you have any questions, doubt, so that I can take those questions, doubt very effectively while we are learning on the micro front end side. Cool. So everything, enjoying, loving it, understanding what I'm trying to convey. Okay. So with that, let's quickly touch upon the composition side. So this is very important. Most of the people don't understand. If you don't have a holistic picture of the entire micro front end, then you may be using some library and whatnot, but you won't get the best of out of it, right? You will be stuck and you won't have any solution in cases where you don't understand how exactly the micro front end basically work. Hence, this is very important. Now, talking about composition understanding is very important. When I say composition, how do you get these, you can say, route level or a visit level things done? So we have to understand there are three techniques that we use in order to make these things happen, right? And what are those techniques basically? I will be talking about what the purpose of the micro front end going ahead. Why, when do we need basically micro front end, right? So don't worry, just stay with me. I will be touching upon so that you understand everything, right? Now, talking about one composition is build time. What does it mean? Let's understand. We are saying, boss, I wanted to render a different application at different route, which is flight, meet, OneDrive. Now these decisions, which application or which technology or what content will be loaded, are taken care at a build time. What does it mean? So you are building different applications at a build time altogether, maybe when you are generating your final build, and at that time you have decided what is going to be stitched with whichever route, right? So you have a build time configuration which have. Now it could be at this level, it could be at this level. So I can help you with different examples in such cases. When I say build time, so in build time, you could think about you are building an entire application which is at flight. You have a different application, you are building it and shipping it. At meet, you are different application building and shipping it. When you are talking about a visit level and you are talking about build time, this is something, guys, you have to understand well. Most of the time when you are doing at a visit level and a build time, you are doing using static package dependency or import, you can say. What does it mean? You might have seen you are using okay, let me ask in other fashion. How many of you have used something like a chatbot which is coming from a different application, or you have integrated like Google ads or any ads related thing in your application. Anyone, or you have integrated Google Calendar kind of a thing in your application. So people who have integrated, you understand what do, you use some npm install of that particular dependency, and you use some or you can say statement in your code where it need to be rendered, certain things basically that you provide in your application, right? So static package dependency generally we use at a build time, where in your npm package.json you define what dependency you wanted to import, and these dependency has to be imported at a build time itself. Now it could be your own application. So people who are working on a large application, you might have seen some packages are developed within your organization but by different team, and you are consuming that particular package at the time of build in your package.json, right? So those kind of a thing basically happens at a build time. Now what are those application basically which helps you to get this build time thing, I will be talking about. So there are single spa, there are other things basically I will be talking about, which are those library which help you to get this build time configuration, right? Now let's talk about runtime configuration. When I say runtime, which means at the time of building, generating an application, I don't know exactly what content is going to come over here. The content of these chat or any of the sections are decided dynamically at the runtime when user is loading your page. At that time, it pulls the widget that need to be loaded, and it basically shows the content of that. That is your runtime configuration. Example, people who might have heard about module federation kind of a thing, right? Those are runtime configuration. So I will be talking about those as well, but those are mostly runtime, because at the time of building you don't know exactly the content, but at the time of serving basically you get, there are perks to that. Example, let's take an example of a runtime where you can get the benefit. If you have a chatbot, now this chatbot look and feel is basically changed. You don't have to do any deployment. Automatically whenever there is a change in the chatbot, the new UI and the look and feel will be basically updated dynamically over here. So you don't have to deploy anything in order to get runtime composition done. So it is done at a runtime, hence the name basically it says the runtime composition. Okay, let me take a question before I jump into the server edge thing. If we are multiple library, our app can show, right? Yes, you can have multiple slow, or you are saying it can become slow. I will be talking about the things that you have to take care when you have a micro front end, and what technique basically you can use in order to ensure that your micro front end behave properly. Let me take another thing, another question. If I use different visit written in a different languages, and if those visit need some props data, how we will pass the props that are the syntax will be different in the those languages? That's a great question, Abhishek. And as I talk about, I will be touching upon multiple things that you have to consider when you are developing a micro front end. One of them is the data passing, which is your state management. And I will be giving you hints, suggestion, and lot more thing to understand how this data passing can be done. First, let me help you to understand and set up the different kind of a micro front end and the right thought process. Then we'll come into the solutioning of each and everything, right? I'll be talking about everything. So Yash is saying bundle size is too big for the child SSPA app around the 20 MB. The lazy loading is not working. Yes, I will be again talking about that also, Yash. How, what generally mistake people do when they are building their micro front end, and they end up into a very big chunk where the performance goes for a toss. Let's be with me for some time. Now we talked about build time, which is when you say npm run build, at the time of build kind of a thing, you are deciding what different packages are going to be consumed. Runtime is more around, you have defined what visit I'm going to use, but what is the content of that visit, that will be decided at a runtime when user is on the page or consuming thing. Talk about server edge side, guys. What does it mean? This is very interesting thing. In short, you understand this is your server side rendering. When the page is getting composed on the server, or you can say it could be on the edge, When I say edge, it could be any edge server basically, where at the time of composing the web page, it decide and assemble the different pieces of the web page. Like, it could be, example, it could be anything. I have a page, I can give you example over here. So it could be anything. So take, I have a e-commerce application where I have different sections. One of my section, basically, you can think about this. So this is my recommendation, this is my uh, product, and this is my something different. So this is my recommendation, which you wanted to basically get. There are multiple ways I could get this recommendation. So how generally done, let me talk about. So this is, that could be server composition. In short, try to understand, whenever you are trying to fetch a page which is slash dashboard or slash any of the page, you are composing different part of your pages on the server, where your server could be fetching this from different you can say altogether different origin altogether, or destination. What does it mean? Let's try to understand. I could be fetching from a different server and saying, boss, give me the content of my recommendation, give me the content of maybe products listing, give me the composition of my cart related thing. What does it mean? I am getting the entire HTML, or it could be a entire React application, it could be different application. In short, you are getting those pieces from different server and saying that give me what need to be rendered, give me what need to be rendered, and you combine all the things that need to be rendered into a single page and you serve back on the client. This is where your server side composition basically that exists. Now it is very easy to do this using server side rendering, where the different pieces you are deciding by fetching different like example, you I'm not sure how many of you have leveraged it. There are feed that get injected into your page on the server side itself by asking, hey, give me the feed content, and whatever you get, you just add the feed content at the end, or somewhere in your page in order to serve the data. That also basically exists. So in short, run, you understand, in during your server side rendering, you decide what content need to be fetched from different sources. It could be different origin altogether, or different domain altogether, it could be different server altogether. What you get is some HTML, and you stitch those HTML together in order to decide what will be the final page content. So this is also techniques basically people use in different kind of purposes. Okay, I hope you got the different kind of a composition basically that are feasible and what people do in different use cases. There definitely, there is no silver bullet solution for people say that, hey, we have module federation, let's use it everywhere and your life will be sorted. No, that doesn't exist, right? You have to understand your complexity of your applications are different. You cannot use a single solution for everything. You should understand what are the different solutions that exist. Based on your ecosystem challenges that you are sitting into, you can choose to decide different options basically for your application. Sounds good? Okay, now let's touch upon the how can you basically make a micro front end application. What are the actual different approaches that exist in the industry, what people use in order to create a micro front end. Let's talk about all of them. So now, before I touch upon all of these techniques, let me see if there are some comments in the chat. When we create an package in a mobile application and integration it into the native mobile app, can this be considered as a micro front end approach? In a mobile application, integrate it into the native mobile. Okay, Gajanan, okay, let me help you to understand. When we have different packages and you are integrating those packages in your native, micro front end come into the picture, especially when we talk about certain parameters. And those parameters I'm going to talk about just below. Just after this, you will be able to understand and differentiate. Either it is a micro front end or you are using a normal design system in order to stitch different, you can say, pieces of your application. So if you are using a different dependencies as in packages, it's not like you're creating a micro front end. Example, if you are using a material design or a fluent design, you are installing some npm package, it doesn't mean you are having a micro front end application, right? So there are few differences that we have to understand that I'm going to touch upon just after this. Let's talk about the different techniques and approaches that exist in the market. First, the the easiest way to create any micro front end application is using the iframe. What does it mean? It's a easiest way to create iframe. It could be both level, it could be route level, it could be visit level. How? Let me help you out. The first, route level. When we open slash flight, you could have a normal html page where you have injected a iframe, and your iframe url, what we call it, in iframe we have something called your host url. Basically, you can give any host url for, say, suppose slash page 1, you are using a.com slash page 1, and for page 2 you may be using b.com slash page 2, kind of a thing, or it could be p1 p2, so that you don't get confused. What does it mean? I don't care what is the content of that particular page is. I know I need to have exact replica of a.com slash p1 when someone try to open slash page 1 in my application. What does it mean? I can help you to understand in other interesting fashion, which is, let's see if I could. Okay, let me try to get one. Da, 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 da. Okay, let me try to fetch. Okay, just a second. So I will help you to understand from an example. Hopefully, if I get it, hopefully, if I can fetch somewhere. Code. Let's see, just give me a second. I couldn't. Oh, I could. Thank you. Okay, hopefully, I could get the example which I wanted to show you. Copy link, address. Okay, so guys, try to see this page and try to see this page. Okay, please open. Okay, in short, let me help you to understand from this. So I hope this will render. Let's see if renders. It's taking time, but I'm positive that this renders. Hopefully, okay. Meanwhile, I will help you to understand. If you notice, the domain is altogether different. It's a engineerchirag.in and this is teachcode.in basically. So, but the content of both the pages basically are same. So one of the technique is basically, I could simply say that when you are opening slash new courses, please open the content of this particular path. Although there are some permission that need to be done basically, but in short, you could decide what exactly you wanted to render when you try to open this. So you can do in a iframe fashion. So this could be entire an iframe where you are opening on a different website, but you are rendering the content of a different website altogether. So that technique is basically using the iframe composition, basically, that we call it. The other technique basically that we have, I hope everyone understand iframes are just a shell where you can say that I wanted to open a web page of xyz website. So in iframe you can give any url, right? What page you wanted to open. Now no one sees that url. It looks like it's a part of your own web page. You have to take care of something like design system and blah blah blah, which we will talk about. But using iframe is a one of the technique to create a micro front end architecture. Although it has issues with resizable design system, data passing, we'll talk about, but practically it is possible and people do use it. Lot of chatbot that you might have seen that leverage the same approach. There are chatbots basically which works on the same funda. Now let's touch upon the second technique basically, guys, which is DOM isolation or single SPA. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of what is this single SPA. So, okay, I don't want it to play the entire thing. I wanted to show you something. So, single SPA does exactly same thing that we talked about, which is, I can show you this. So you can have an application which is composed of different technology altogether, different library and framework. It could be React, it could be Angular and whatnot. This is one of the way to create a micro front end, which is your single SPA. Now in this case, the major technique which is used over here is you have a DOM isolation. What does it mean? Let's try to understand, everyone. If you understand this technique, your life will be sorted. What does it mean? Most of the time you will see they have a different route where your application get mounted. What does it mean? Try to understand. So when you try to read the content of your web page, whenever you have a React application, how do you see any React application? So when you go, I can't open. So it could be anything. Example, I go to code. When you open any React application, generally what do you see? In your React application, you will see you have a root is associated in most of the time with your application. When I say root, you have some ID. Okay, forget about this. You have some ID is equal to something on where your application is hosted. How many of you can recall it? You have some ID, you have a root element on which your application is actually rendered in a React application, or most of the other application, you have a root where you wanted to host your application on the client. In case of single SPA, think about your page composition like this. In such case, you could have something called ID, different ID over here, which is ID is equal to root 1, and over here it could be ID is equal to root 2. Most of the applications, guys, if you see it properly, when you try to inspect element and try to debug, you will realize works on DOM isolation. What does it mean? I'm going to help you to understand a very interesting concept which you can leverage for challenges where you have a conflict in the React version as well. What does it mean? Let's try to understand. When I say DOM isolation, it means where your application is going to be rendered, that is actually a different root node altogether. What does it mean? You could say, I wanted to render React over here and I wanted to render Vue.js over here. So you have an isolation of a DOM on which your React application is working and on which your Vue.js or AngularJS application is basically working. That helps so that whatever your JavaScript, whatever DOM references you are taking, whatever is actually happening is happening within that DOM. So your this DOM reference is isolated with the other DOM reference. Hence, your one React application is not going to interfere with the another, you can say, Angular or Vue.js application. Although it has some complication and challenges that I will be talking about. To help you out, I will be talking, but at a high level, these are the root level isolation that are done. Now, there's one more interesting thing that people do. You might have seen your single application. Okay, let me ask one simple thing, guys. How many of you says that in a single page I can have two React versions or two different React application? I think when we can have a different technology altogether, React is still the same. I could have two different child or two different independent React application in one single page. That is possible, right? Now when we say that is possible, it also means I could have a different version over here and different version over here. And how I can have it? Using a DOM isolation. This and this could be a different isolation. When you are mounting your React component or React application, you will use this reference, and in another version you can use this reference. This is one of the technique basically that exist. Cool. Although I will be talking about some of the challenges, like in iframe I talked about the challenges responsiveness, the challenges data passing. How do I pass the data from parent to the iframe container, and from iframe to the parent container? Responsiveness we talked about. How do I handle the authentication that need to be shared between the parent and child? There are multiple things that we have to take care over here. Similarly, in DOM isolation, the biggest problem that exists apart from the data sharing and whatnot is also from a design constraint. What does it mean? If you write a global CSS, that global CSS is going to impact both the guy. So there are incidents where most of the people struggle. They write something in this application and that impact in the other application, right? How do you avoid that? There are ways like CSS in JS kind of a thing that exists, where you write, end of the day it is written as an in contextual, you can say CSS instead of writing a global CSS. So those things exist, but again the challenges resides around the design systems as well, which I will talk about. But at a high level, yes, using DOM isolation, using single SPA as a project which I was talking about, this is possible. So I can quickly show you example. If you're configuring, where do I find there should be something related to React hosting tutorial, micro front end, APIs, no ecosystem. Yes, there should be some React. Do you see React? Why? Okay, this is the React. So if you wanted to create your modular CSS is also the one of the way you can do it. But if you wanted to have your single SPA React, you can use this library which helps with the composition. At a high level, you could see that you are going to compose multiple application together. So I could show you a small. So in short, if you see, you can say that, hey, I wanted to compose this. I wanted to compose different thing. I wanted to compose this. I wanted to compose this. I wanted to. So your application can be combination of multiple things, multiple library, multiple framework based outcome. So that is something which is feasible, and you can do with the single SPA composition, which is practically possible. At a high level, if you see. Single SPA React, which is the same thing which I opened. This is the older one, we don't have to get into, but in short, it's a very simple configuration basically that you have to do in order to make it work in the React fashion. Basically, explore this. Single SPA is one of them. There is one more. What was that? There is one more. I will take question. There's something called Pyral framework. This is also one of the kinda famous, not that famous as in single SPA, but this also helps you to do the similar kind of a thing. So what it does, I can show you some example of this Pyral, where the fundamental basically remains the same. I will show you an example over here. Let me find where huh. So in short, in Pyral, what you create a small sections, or we call it pilots. So you create a different pilots or a extension kind of a thing, and you group it together. It could be, I wanted to register a menu, I wanted to register a title, I wanted to register your created component or your creative visit, which we call it extension in case of Pyral. So you can create those small pilot, and you can stitch them together irrespective of which technology it is actually created in. So that is also feasible in this case. This also works on the same funda, which is your DOM isolation. So all of your pilot are mounted on a different DOM, where even it is created with a different technology, it does not basically hamper or impact each other in terms of the functionality. That is another. Okay, let me take a couple of questions from the chat before I talk about the different other approaches that exist. uh, Okay, so let me see. In my child SPPA app, we have some script that need to be loaded before the app initialize. I added into bootstrap config, but the reference isn't working. Huh. So there are, so yes, that's an interesting thing that you have to understand. The accessing something, for that you have to understand where that get added. When you add something in the initialization or the bootstrap and you have added as a script, try to understand if it is getting mounted as a part of your window object. If yes, you could be able to access it properly, and if yes, then what is the name on using which it get mounted on the window object. If you're trying to leverage using some import method, that is not going to work, because your root level thing either inject as a window object, or it has to pass from a shell to your independent child. If it is not getting passed, you cannot use as an import statement. That is a build time thing that you have to understand. So windows object are accessed at a runtime, and your import should be taken care as a dependency at the time of build time. So those are small things that you have to take care of. I wanted to connect with you. Where should I DM you? You can, Suman, you can DM me on the LinkedIn. I could help you over there. I have added a React into the PHP for the particular for one page just to showcase user list. Yes, that is feasible, and that's a good example where you don't have to change everything in order to start using the new technology or different technology. And that is something which I'm going to touch upon, the benefits and when to use the micro front end just after this, when I talk about the different approaches. Now, another issue is, considering we have left the nav bar and the current child SPA app, we have video call. With the issue is when I switch to the another parent app using the left navigation. Yes, maybe you have to help me with some more code or something that I can help you with. The call stop working as a audio video element are getting removed as soon as I switch. I wanted to call to the another without issues, but the end user isn't able to listen to my. Okay, in such cases, as I said, most of them work on the DOM isolation. Always remember, if your component or your DOM is getting unmounted and mounted, then the behavior that you are expecting is bound to happen. We have to be very cautious in terms of your root should not get unmounted and mounted whenever you are performing any activity. If it get, then it is like it will be initiating from the starting, and whatever your connection related to video audio will be lost. So you have to be cautious whenever you are actually playing with the SPA or micro frontend with this particular DOM isolation approach. So you can try that. You can think from that perspective and try debugging what exactly happened. Is it getting you can have, there is something called mutation in debugger. You can add a whenever there is a mutation in the DOM, and what kind of a mutation is happening. If it is a delete kind of a remove kind of a mutation which is happening, that could be one of the root cause for your issue that you are facing. Yash, maybe through the shadow DOM we can import the different script file. Okay, so Harish, that's a good point that you talked about, and I'm going to touch upon shadow DOM approach as well when I'm talking about the web component. So just wait for a couple of more seconds, and we are going to touch upon that technique as well. Cool. So we talked about iframe, we talked about DOM isolation. Let me talk about module federation. Module federation is very interesting technique which has recently came with the in Webpack configuration. It started with, now I think it is available with the other approaches as well. But Webpack 5, I think, started with this module federation kind of a approach. What it says, boss, I'm going to help you with something what this iframe was doing, something more powerful. What it says, boss, you can, at the time of build, at the time of build, just, so say suppose this is how your page is configured. You have this section, you have this section. Now what it says, it could be from same app, it is coming from a different app. Now, what it says, boss, the things which are coming at a different app could come at a runtime. What does it mean? I could simply say that I have a chat widget. I am just defining it's a chat widget, but what content is going to come in the chat widget is decided at a runtime. How it is divided at a runtime? Think about like your hosted URL where you have a.com, b.com, some page. Now that page hosts a component where you are saying at the runtime I will fetch that component and runtime I will replace the placeholder with that particular content. That happens at a runtime. How that happens, I can show you a very simple example where you will be able to understand very quickly. I think this is the one. Now, guys, you see there is a app 1 or a app 2 which you can think about visit 1 and visit 2. How this is configured, let me show you a quick thing so that you will be able to understand it very easily. Your app 1 is a hard coded content basically in your original application. But your app 2 is not actually present in this particular application altogether. App 2 has its own build process, old hosting process, own deployment process. It's hosted all together on some different thing. Where it is hosted, let's try to see. So your remote app is actually present on app 2, which is app over here. And if you see, it has its own build process, deployment process, and it is available on port 3002. Now, what happens when you try it and what it does? It just says, I'm app 2, I app 2, right? This content will be replaced over here, which is remote app dynamically at runtime. I can show you hopefully from a inspect element so that you will be able to see few things very interestingly. Let's see if I show you. Okay, let me try to show you over here. I hope I can. Oh, what happened? Network, no throttling, everything is fine. Why did not load? Something wrong. Okay, let me try over here. 3002. No, it did not show. Okay, let's see if it shows 3000. Why? Hey, there is filter was not working. So guys, try to notice. So we got this content, which is app 2 content loaded dynamically from a different port altogether. So you are currently on a different port. You are accessing the content from a different port altogether, which is your different domain altogether. Oh, still Skelly draw screen is visible. Oh, thank you for highlighting. Let me fix that. Okay, guys, I hope my screen is updated now. Let me quickly help you to understand back. Thank you for highlighting. Okay, so guys, once my screen is visible, I'm just reiterating a couple of things which you might have missed, which is in this case, you see you have a application 1, application 2. It's a two different application altogether. So you have application 1, application 2, application 1. Okay, I hope no. Let me try to reshare my screen. Okay, let me know if my screen is visible to you guys. Much better. Just give me a couple of seconds. I think now it should be visible. Okay, reiterating. That happens. And thanks for highlighting. You have app 1, you have app 2. App 1 is a different application. Your app 2 is a different application. Your app 2 is a different application. If you see what does app 2 does, just says app 2. It has its own build process and everything. It renders and open at 3002 port. Now you see you have a app 1. In app 1 it has its own deployment process and everything. And if you see your app 1 basically has something called this. So you render a static app 1 and you render the content of the app to using a some technique which I'm going to help you out. And this technique is your module federation. What it says, boss, please import the application which is called app2 from a different route altogether or different host altogether. So which is coming from not same port 3001, it will be coming from 3002, which is a different domain altogether. Fetch a visit from a different domain altogether dynamically at a runtime. I'm not deciding at build time what need to be rendered. I'm deciding at a time of build what need to be rendered. This is something which is interesting. Let me show you how it is configured. If you go into Webpack, over here you see app2 url is actually this. So you have to render from this url. What need to be rendered is this, boss. Your app2 is coming from a different application altogether. It's a different you can say domain altogether from where this is getting rendered. I can show you something interesting from a network tab also. So if you go to network tab, reload, you will see localhost to 2002. From this different domain altogether, we are fetching a component that need to be rendered, and this is the component code which need to be rendered. So you see, at runtime, we are deciding that from a different domain altogether or a different port, it could be anything. Fetch this dynamic component, not at the time of build, at the time of runtime, basically, we are deciding to load. This happens with the module federation. So module federation provides this technique where at the time of build, you just decide from where you wanted to render the component. And whenever there is a change in the component, example, if I go and change my component saying that updated, so you will notice you got it updated where I did not build my app 1, only my app 2 was built and updated, and we got the data. So if I have to show you, basically, your, if I say that app 2 updated 1, I think we have to reload over here. It does not does the hot module reload, but this is dynamically at a runtime. You will get the data. You don't have to deploy your root shell, which works absolutely fine. So it's a different code base, it's a different team, it could be different deployment, it could be everything different for app2. It is nothing to do with the same repo, same tech, same you don't have to keep it at the same repo altogether. So if you see how it is basically configured, so if you notice, you have your app.js. It says that I will be getting from app2/app, and there are some configuration basically which are done. Where is that? uh, so your app2 url basically is dynamically which is configured, you can leverage. So there I will be going into the more detail with all the approaches basically that I'm showcasing over here. So I will be showing you the code bases for all of them. Maybe I will keep the part 2 of the micro front end where I will create a sample example for each of these approaches. Today my intent is basically to give you the right visibility and thought process how these things are built from a code perspective. I know when I start showing you the code, you will not understand, try to understand the fundamental. You will be stuck into the React syntax, which I don't want you to be. So first concepts are clear, then stitching those, you can say, from a code perspective will be very easy, and that's my intent for today. Cool. So this is on the runtime module for federation. Now it comes a web component. Web component works on a web component again from what we say, from Google. And the web, you can say web components are very powerful because it works on a shadow DOM, on shadow DOM fundamentals. When I say shadow DOM fundamental, so end of the day, it creates, when you have an application in your DOM, it creates a different shells altogether, which are isolated shells. So it has different shadow DOM. It has a different shadow DOM. Shadow DOM. Or in short, I could say it has something called uh, sandbox. So it creates sandbox environment for one and two. So this and this are independent altogether. So web components works in a very interesting fashion. I can show you. So you can create your custom element. You can use the uh, where do I show you? So you can create your custom. I wanted to show you the so you can create your custom element. You can define for my this element I wanted to render this. So in UI you will be using this. So I will tell you companies which use it. Google use web component very extensively. Even I'm not sure if they have changed things on the Gmail. When you go to Gmail and try to see the syntax of that, you will see those are custom components which are basically rendered. Let me see if I can still see those. If I can, I will be showing you the snippet. Just give me a second, guys. If I could see some custom component still on Gmail, I will help you with that. Okay, I can show you another example, not directly with the Gmail, but something similar. Okay, let's see. So guys, if you see, there is a Merlin bot component which is basically shown over here. You see this Merlin bot basically getting listed, Merlin bot, and then within Merlin bot you can see there is a shadow DOM which is created, and within this shadow DOM you have the entire independent React application which does some job. What is this Merlin bot? You are actually creating a web component within which a shadow DOM is created, where you have independent its own style, its own JavaScript, its own isolation, and you have its own. In this case, it is a React app which is created within the shadow DOM. This is another technique basically people use in order to create micro front end using you can say web component strategy. So you can use web component. In case you are not aware of the web component, you can create custom element, you can create shadow DOM as I talked about. So in case you are not aware of the shadow DOM, please get an understanding. So you create an isolated tree altogether, which does not have direct impact on the shadow host, your main tree. So it's a subtree basically that you create, which has a different rendering and DOM access techniques basically that we have. Cool. So touch upon that, how this web component basically works. In case you are not able to understand much, I can help you with a working solution in the next live session we have. Maybe let's see if I can show you, although it's deprecated, but let me see if I can still show you. So example is a similar thing, custom element which I shows. X search is something that you will see in your DOM, and within that X search you will have a React component which is being mounted inside that. So this is the technique basically we use. So whenever in your code base you see some non HTML5 like syntax, those are custom element. Most of the time you will see those are web components. Most of the time. Okay, we talked about these technique. Let me talk about some key properties which defines a React or micro front end. First, guys, can you independently deploy your application, the the micro apps basically that you have? Can you deploy them independently? If you can, yes, you are. So there are multiple. One of the thing is deployment. Can different team have different deployment strategy for different micro apps? If yes, then it's one of the criteria. Second, can you define different owners to different those micro apps from a code perspective and from a responsibility perspective? If yes, then basically that is part of that. Composability, basically, can I compose in different order, different pattern? Can I reuse at different places? If yes, can do I have a isolations? If yes, then you are creating a micro front end. Can I have a clear defined contract of how my micro app is going to work? What are the functionality that you get and how it is going to interact with a different micro app? That contract definition has to be there with every micro application that you create. Hence said, the data passing, the data communication is also the contract basically that you have to have in your micro app that you are creating. If you are not thinking about that, then you are not creating a true micro front end. Now, these are some key things, but and on top of it, I wanted to help you to understand what in when you should basically create a micro front end, when you should even think about micro front end is something which is very, very important. The first thing, guys, if you are building a very large and complex application, then think about micro front end. Do not think for a very small application where your team size is very small. When you have a large team size and you wanted to isolate those team to work independently on a different tech stack so that they don't have too much dependency on each other works. If you can isolate and make them work independently, right, then your micro front end is needed. So you can have independent deployment needs basically are there, where one team says that, hey, I wanted to build something which are used by different other team, and I wanted to build faster, and I don't wanted to have a tightly coupling with the other team because I have more frequent deployment as compared to the other team. It could be anything, right? So example, there are few pages, few parts of your application which are not so updated very frequently, right? It could be help and doc content is modified, but not the look and feel, theme, the functionality within the help doc example or a support cases. But your home page of, say, suppose Flipkart, you can say Flipkart like application, your home page need a lot of innovation, A/B testing, lot of creativity as compared to your product page. So different team could have different deployment processes altogether. Your payment page does not need to be deployed with every release that you are making, right? So you can have different team taking care of different code bases, different technologies, different deployment strategies all together. And scale, when you wanted to scale your organization, where you having a one team, now you have a different teams for dedicated responsibility. Think about that. There are micro front end which are used for the incremental migrations also. What does it mean? You may be on Angular, you wanted to migrate to React. You are on React 16 and you wanted to migrate to React 18 altogether, right? In such cases, incremental migration, you can think about micro front end where part of it is still on the legacy and part of it you wanted to use a different new technology altogether. Such cases, micro front end is something which is recommended. Example, in my career, I created my first micro front end somewhere 8 years back, uh, somewhere 10 year back, which I created at a route level. Then after a year, I was in another organization. There was a need where we have to migrate from Angular 1 to React, and in that case, I created another micro front end over there, which helps not just at a route level but also at a component level, where your Angular and React works together in a single hop, and where we have to migrate everything to the React, you can say, technology. At that level, basically, I worked on the incremental migration, which worked very well for us. Now, other is domain driven. What does it mean? When you have your company working on different pieces which does not have to be stitched together at same time. What does it mean? Your company is working on flight, on recharge, on different business or domain needs, which can coexist, but which can independently be basically running their own domain and businesses basically. In such cases, it is highly recommended you have your micro front end where different team, different domain, different businesses can have their own control altogether. basically related to how and when they wanted to basically develop, build, how your product is going to look like, and how they wanted to basically ship those things. So those are very important. Very, very important thing, when you should not use micro front end, guys. This is very important to everyone who start with a buzzword on the interview saying that, boss, I created a micro front end, but they don't have a valid use case where they have to use, or why they even use the micro front end. Even they think about the micro front end. You have a very solid use case, else you are going into the trap. And what is that trap? I'm going to help you. What are the complication and challenges you are going to face if you don't have the right use cases in order to build the micro front end, which I will touch upon below. But when you should not create a micro front end, you have a small team of couple of folks, maybe 5-6 people, and you are thinking about micro front end, I will say that try to avoid. If you have a small app and a small team, do not over engineer. You will get into the challenges which I'm going to touch upon. When high performance is a need, when performance is very, very critical, especially when you have a real time application where you wanted to show almost real time metrics, avoid doing over engineering. If you have to go for a, you can say, micro front end, in such cases even try for a route based instead of a component based or a visit based, because performance is something that will go for a toss when you are trying to stitch and doing the over engineering in such cases. Strongly coupled UX, when I say strongly coupled, when you, the experience on the same page is very, very important to be aligned, and the user behavior is something which is very, very important to have a smooth transitioning motion, navigation from one place to the other places, and the pixel perfection kind of a thing, right? Responsiveness. Be cautious because it comes with a cost. It takes a lot of effort to make this happen, a consistent user experience and behavior. When you talk about micro front, it does not come out of box. It takes a lot of pain in order to make it happen. If you're early stage startup, please avoid that. So please do not do the over engineering. If you're early stage startup, try to get maximum revenues by solving in a easy fashion instead of showcasing that, hey, you know, micro front end kind of a thing. When you don't have support from a DevOps, your team does not have maturity related to the deployment, how the complex deployment can take care of, avoid that. Because whenever you are into micro front end, there are things that have to think about: versioning, caching, right? Performance, different domains serving different things. So there are multiple things that has to be thought through when you talk about micro front end, and DevOps understanding is something which is needed to make it happen. So if you don't have much, please try to avoid micro front end. Shared state and communication in a heavy apps are complex. So when you have to think about auth, you have to think about how do I share my data from one app, one visit to the other visit. That kind of a communication, if you wanted to have almost real time communication between the different visits that you have, and you have created in a different technology, that comes with complications that you have to think about. So it does not comes out of box. Creating a first SPA using a module federation, a single SPA using web component looks very easy and straightforward. Hey, I did something funny. You see, this is a technology, this is a React app, this is Vue.js app, and it stitches together and you are able to render a page. From first glimpses, it looks very easy and interesting to showcase to the world that I know micro frontend. Why not? But when it comes to the reality of consuming it to a scale, to a bigger, to work in production, it takes efforts, guys. It really takes effort. So don't over engineer what I say. Yes, you have a team, you have these things in place, you have the right requirement. Why not? But don't forcibly create a requirement. That is what my recommendation will be for the micro frontend. Now, having a mind set up and your design so that it can be fit in this direction in future, you must think of. But making it from a day one a micro front end, I will say no. Avoid that, right? Thought process, architectural design, scalability, extensibility. Yes, you should think about everything, how it can scale. Now, real challenges that I'm going to touch upon, guys. The real pain challenges that no one talks about. Everyone talks about the fancy thing about the micro front end. Let's talk about go to the ground reality, guys, of the micro front end. The first is design system. What I meant by, you are using material UI in React and you are using material UI of Vue.js, even if you are trying to do that, you may see some experiences difference between both of them. In case you have two different design system, you are screwed up, because your one page will have different theme and different experiences altogether, which your product will never want. So be cautious. Second, in case you have same design system for your different technologies, to have that same behavior is also complicated. It does not come out of box. You have to tweak, you have to make in order to look like same and have the same experience when you are using a micro front end. Even you talk about two different versions altogether in material UI, which is one using React 16 and second using React 18, you will see some differences in terms of the experiences. So maintaining that experiences with the same design system, same look and feel is tough. So be careful when you are proposing your solutions to PM designers in order to use the micro front end. Think about how this is going to work for you. Second, how do you going to do the data sharing? So define your data sharing between your different apps very clearly, how they are going to communicate. There are different techniques, different ways to do that. One, multiple people do by passing it using the window object. Again, a horrible way of doing that. Second way of basically doing the data sharing is using PubSub. So you have a publisher subscriber kind of a way where your shell takes care of subscribing or everything, and now you have publisher from a different app which publishes things. Now your shell has access to the data, and then they can basically share to the subchild. So there is a technique basically which is used in the data sharing. So PubSub is one of the most popular way of basically doing the data sharing between the subchild and subcomponent. Auth, you have to think about how you are going to take off authentication and authorization. One, you are logged in, then it should be logged in all the subchild. You have some permission where some route, some component, some visit, some part of your application only admin can access, or only certain type of role of user can access. You have to think about those authorization related stuff as well. So be careful and mindful basically when you are thinking about the authorization in the micro front end application. Be cautious on that. Different technique, as I said, it could be web component iframe, it could be module federation, it could be DOM isolation. But irrespective of that, this is something that you have to think very clearly when you are trying to build application. Security, why? Because you're starting from your code itself is not coming from a one single source. Now your code is residing in multiple sources. It could be different repo in a build time, it could be different code base coming at a runtime, which is like module federation. It could be iframe kind of a thing where entire code and entire everything is basically coming from a different domain altogether. It could be DOM isolation, again, from where this code basically comes at the time of build time, runtime. Those things has to be taken care of, because the ownership of the code that is going to be rendered on your page is not on a single hand. It is coming from multiple teams, multiple sources, right? So you have to be very sure around the trustworthiness of the code that you are going to stitch together in a micro front end. Performance, someone talked about, when I have my app 1, app 2, app 3, all of them may be having a DOM isolation where one is on React 1 version, another on different React version. What about if my application has same React 18, React 18 and React 18, but as these are different DOM isolated, so all of them are going to render 3 instances of a React. How do I take care of the performance, right? So there are techniques basically, guys, which are called deduping of the dependency and moving those dedupe dependency to your shell. So those technique basically exist where you don't have to load the same library multiple times, because you have a DOM isolation and you have a 3 different React application which is getting rendered, right? So there are other kind of techniques basically which are used. I will tell you, if you are not aware of network level optimization, I will highly recommend you guys to check this out. So this is going to help you like anything. In case you are not aware, please go and watch this video. In you haven't, in case you haven't, this will give you the ideas how you can basically optimize your different JavaScript which is getting rendered, and how you can basically load at a different time. So there are a lot of techniques which can be used to optimize your performance of an micro front end application. End of the day, it's going to be assets that has to be loaded in a most efficient way. So those technique I have covered over there. Try it out. SEO is another one of the complicated piece. You have to think about if it is single client side rendering, server side rendering, if composition is happening on the build time or the run time. So in all of those different scenarios, your SEO is something that you have to double think about. So SEO is very, very important, which get hamper when people use the micro front end and they don't think about how my crawler is basically going to take care in terms of it can be Google, it can be Microsoft Bing crawler, it could be any crawler. What I meant by, then you have observability. When I say observability, how you are going to log your performance, your errors, your anything basically you're logging. So that you have to think about, because the logging and the way you monitor your things could be different, and different techniques that has to be used in different frameworks. So be cautious. Are you, because I've seen people who just think and takes care at a shell level, but they forget to have the right observability at their child level. So they don't get to know what is actually happening within their child apps. They only see from a shell level, which is partial information. Be mindful around that, guys. The other thing is versioning. When I say versioning, the most complicated piece in the entire micro frontend is having the right versioning. What does it mean? Most of the time when we are having a micro frontend, we are dealing with dynamic assets. When I say assets, most of the time dynamic JavaScript. Either it is build time or runtime. Build time, you have the right npm package version whenever you are doing a new deployment, so it knows that I need to pull the latest version. Similarly, at runtime, I showed you example, I think. Uh, Let me show you again in case you remember and you forgot. I don't. So you remember when I was showing you in network tab, reload 3002 example. This right now, this is not versioned. The problem with this will, you see, it is coming from service worker. What does it mean? It is load from service worker. It does not fetch the fresh content from this particular path, which means even there is a deployment and there is a code which changed in this particular path, your shell or a host, a consumer will never get to know the latest code. So be cautious around the right versioning, else you will be getting from a browser cache, service worker, maybe from CDN, whatever it is, right? So you need to get the latest content, and if you don't take care of it, then you will be screwed up. So please take care of the right versioning, which is very, very important over here. The other thing is your deployment. Please take care of your deployment for the different micro application. How you deploy, how you stitch together. You have to think about the CDN and the edge configurations for each of different apps. So the versioning, caching strategy, everything basically you have to think about when you have a micro front end, and different app need to be deployed differently. This is very, very important to think when you are building the micro front end. Micro front end is not just fancy term where you say that, hey, I have written the code which does the job, but you don't think about how it is going to be deployed and how it is going to be stitched together. It's your responsibility because you build the micro front end. Cool. Let me take a couple of questions. Oh, before that, very, very important thing that most of the people don't consider when they are building a micro front end is the developer experience. Guys, please do not miss that. If you have a large, if you have team of XYZ, maybe 10 people, 20 people, 30 or 300 people, how the developer experience is going to look like when you have different application which are stitching together. When you are working and people have to do the development, you have a shell which is responsible for your auth, your shell which is responsible for data sharing and n number of things, even for version dependency management and all sort of thing. How that experience is going to look like. If your developer experience is screwed up, you don't have a hot module reload, right? You don't have, your build is taking a lot of time when you are making a small change. all of those experiences is going to cost you, because the time taken in order to do the development is going to be horrible. If you don't have right debugging capability with the micro front end that you have created, it will be another horrible experience basically that you are creating. So please be mindful when you are creating a micro front end. How is your developer experience going to look like? Is it going to be more? It is, developer experience is impacted, no doubt. Most of the cases is impacted, but when I say, it should not be very drastic degrade from the how you are managing a single application to having a multiple application, right? So be cautious, which is very 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 important. Let me take a couple of questions from the chat. uh, App to, even though it's from the different domain, you can see this call was like this, he's accessing the script file, not literally the webpack sets like to the window. Yes, Harish. So it actually loads the visit, or you can say the webpack chunk from a different domain which is responsible to render that particular visit. That's how it works. API call is a different thing. I wanted to know how we will import the app2 component and app1 component to render those code base in entirely in a different place or repository. Abhishek, I showed you touch upon the import strategies, but again, I will help you in a part 2 of a micro front end where I will show you different code bases and samples basically for each of these techniques basically I talked about. How can I use the HTTP interceptor to pass for all micro front end? There are things, interceptor, which are used in many of those cases, but I wanted to know what exactly you wanted to do with the HTTP interceptor, sort of basically for the micro front end. There are n number of use cases for interceptors, but what exactly you wanted to do with interceptor in your case? Cool. So with that, guys, I will highly recommend. I'm going to add more content basically related to that in the Namaste Frontend System Design, and definitely some of those things will I will add over here in the, you can say, where is that, in the Engineer Chirag, my YouTube channel as well. So stay tuned on this. I will highly recommend. And the other thing, thanks for joining. So guys, this is all I wanted to cover today. Thanks for joining on Sunday, taking time. Basically, do share with your friend if you like the concept basically we touch upon on the micro front end side. There are code bases, more examples, more things which I will be helping you on the micro front end very soon. So stay tuned, share your love, share as much as possible. That will help me to come up with more great examples on the micro front end side. Cool. And do share your questions. Do share the things that you have in mind. I will be taking care in upcoming sessions as much as possible I can. Cool. So any questions, guys? I'm going to take your questions basically from the chat. If you have anything, feel free to ask. Okay, let me see. Thanks everyone. Thanks for all your love and support. Let me take few questions from the chat. Please address the bundle size question. Oh, yes, very, very important. One thing, if you notice, I talked about dedupe of a dependency. If you are having a multiple child and you are using the same version, can you dedupe that dependency on your shell where only one instance of React is loaded instead of multiple versions of React, right? Which is very, very important. So please take care of that. Let me take question from Slido. I think people said some of them are added to the Slido. There are a lot of people have added. Let me quickly say that. What question will be? I hope my screen. Yeah. What question will be asked in the micro frontend for the 6+ year of experience frontend developer? Also, what important topic should we cover? As I talked about, people are not going to ask you directly, hey, tell me micro frontend and different approaches in micro frontend. Most of the people will not. Most of the time your micro front end thing will be asked in your system design round or your hiring manager round, where people are asking, hey, giving a scenario, we have this use case, what do you think, how should we basically solve our problem in our current application? This is how they will touch upon, and then you may come up with saying that, hey, I have solution similar problem where we use the micro front end in order to solve, and this is how we do it, and this is what basically impact we brought. This is what will be important whenever we are touching upon. So trust me, direct questions most of the people will not ask. maybe early developers may ask you direct question, have you used micro frontend because of the cool buzz, but a experienced person will give you a scenario to understand if you used, what was the scenario, and if it was really needed, and given a scenario, if it, how do you try to fit, and what approach you will be taking from a different approach basically we talked about. So that is a situational based question most of the time you will get instead of a direct question. Okay, how can I build a micro front end using the React.js given with an example and also you can good resources? I talked about multiple of those examples. From a code perspective, I will be helping with more code working examples in the part 2 of it. How to implement the micro front end with a different framework or same framework with a different version. Uh, I talked about multiple of those single SPA module federation. And again, from a code perspective, a working examples I will be having in part 2, as I said. In which case we have to change our normal application to micro front end. I have already talked about this. Uh, what type of advantage and disadvantages? I think we have already talked about this. uh, Improvement performance wise, most of the time your performance will be degraded, guys. Your most of the time your performance are degraded when you use the micro front end. Be cautious on that. How to handle the state management when we are using the different framework of the micro, as I said, one of the ways your pub shop, you create a publisher subscriber kind of a thing, and you do the data passing using pub shop kind of a thing over there. Communication routing become the challenging part in the micro front end. Is there any way to make it simpler and standard? I will be helping with some of the examples in upcoming sessions. Again, nothing is simpler because you are choosing an architecture where you can use some libraries, as I said, single SPA, but a silver bullet, and you can't just blindly trust on that, because when your use case become complex, when your application become complex, none of the library will help you to scale. You have to write your own custom logics. Like example, in my current organization, current project, we have a custom version of webpack. Basically, we have configuration which supports the micro front end architecture. We don't use any library, external library, to basically achieve it. So we have our own you can say customizations in order to achieve, which is important. To communicate from one micro front end to the other, what is the best way? Publisher subscriber pattern is a good, or is the publisher subscriber pattern is the good way instead of passing using the window object. So people have done that, and sometimes you don't have much options. You can leverage that, but publisher subscriber is one of the good way. There are different way to achieve the micro front end, like through the webpack module federation, CDN script attempt, iframe. Which one is better? Again, depending on the use cases, you have to choose. I can do one more thing, guys. I can have another part 3 of micro front end where I talk about, you understand the different approaches, you have seen the code, you can code now in which different scenarios which technique to use from a real world use cases. I can come up with that as well, so that also works. In webpack, any exposed app is set in a global window. Isn't it a problem, security concern? Anything which is on the global window object, yes. But guys, there are people are smart, and people use some techniques to avoid the monkey patching basically on the window object. So I will talk about that. So you don't create a static variable, you create a variable using what we call, I forget the term. Mm, Let me JS data types. What do we call it, man? Okay, hold on. I will tell you. The data type we call symbol. Yes, we use symbols basically in order to avoid the monkey patching. So what I meant by the reference that you create on the window object are created using symbols. So you cannot basically override directly by using the, yeah, you cannot use override directly using the variable names. So it is always a unique reference that you have to avoid the monkey patching kind of a thing. So there are ways, guys. Okay, AG grid, I did not understand. Is runtime how we will import? As I talked about in runtime, module federation is something that is taken care of, which loads the webpack, you can say chunk, and which injects dynamically and renders. Is there any real-time website example of micro frontend? Almost all the big companies' production application are micro frontend application. So I work on Microsoft Ads. Ads.microsoft.com is a micro frontend application. So earlier, n number of companies, n number of projects which I've worked are micro. Flipkart.com is a micro front end. Amazon application is a micro front end. Uh, Almost whatever company you name, it is a micro front end. Big companies, what I meant. How much can I have good for 2 years of experience in front end for system design? Um, Okay, so this is a generic question. I will recommend, highly recommend, if you are starting your career in a system design, please, first of all, complete this series. Guys, without any second thought, please complete this series, which is must for everyone. So front end system design, check the system design, which is check the system design is series. I will recommend everyone to complete. Once you have completed this, please, if you wanted to even level up, go into the code and you wanted to create more in-depth thing, I will recommend you go on a Namaste front end system design. Watch those all the videos. You will be next level, you can say, front end developer. Cool, we covered almost everything. Okay, I see a question. Does lazy loading does not work in the child SPA? Whole bundle is imported when mounting. It is designed by the, again, yes, we have to understand these are different child components. These are different cells altogether, which will load their bundles. Now their whole bundle, what strategy you can use? You can use the lazy loading to, so that it loads independently, it load differently. The main problem that you have to solve, is there any shared React version or something that I don't need to load n number of time. I can pull it up at a root level, so that the chunk of each of these child app reduces. So you have to find that and lazy load independently, and load only the required thing in the different app. So you have to reduce the chunk file bundle size as much as possible of the child apps. That is the thing that you can do. Again, you can lazy load the different part of your application at different time. You can preload techniques basically that you can use. Like, there are things basically which you can leverage a lot of in these cases. Cool, great. Any other question, guys? Cool. In that case, we are done. Thanks everyone for your love. And guys, please do explore codekarma.dev as well if you have not. There are a lot of interesting things. Even the 3 courses which I added over here will give you a lot of learnings, understanding around the front end, 30 days of JavaScript, 30 days of DSA, basically in JavaScript. All of them basically will help you to get better, and all of them are basically free, guys. So you can go enroll, try it out, learn as much as possible from all these courses. Great, thank you. And in case you have not watched the Namaste front end system design, please guys, have a look into the Namaste front end system design, and you will see your life, your career will start taking a drastic drift basically in the front end side. Cool. With that, thank you once again. Thanks for giving time on Sunday. Thanks for all the love. And yep, let's level up the web development, and let's share this as much as possible. Thank you, guys. See you some other time, some other session. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye bye.